BBC News, that is, has a story about a software company in Argentina where, you know what? It's actually your colleagues that determine your salary, including raises. So if you want a raise, there's 3 meetings a year. You put yourself forward. I guess you state your case as to why you deserve a bump up, and it's your colleagues who deliberate and ultimately decide. Is this a smart way to handle what they say is the enduring pay gaps that exist in certain industries, or does this just sound like too radical for some of you?
Well, Mel, I think it's important. You're asking, like, they are attempting to address pay inequality. And so the root cause of a lot of these radical suggestions is, like, historical dissatisfaction with how it's so not transparent how salaries are distributed and decided upon. And we've been talking about this for several years now. The Time's Up movement, related to the Me Too movement, related to harassment and inequality, marginalized people in workplaces. And there is, like, a selective group of people at the top in many corporations that decide, and they encourage people, don't talk about money with your colleagues. Don't reveal how much of a raise you got. Don't reveal how much you negotiated for that new contract. And the consequences have not been favorable for employees under that senior level. So this is why these radical suggestions have been coming up. I mean, that is the root issue and the problem.
I mean, if you talk about pay gaps, the latest studies say that for women in particular, it will take 217 years to close the pay gap. And that's not even racialized women who make 59 cents to every dollar that a white man makes. Like, I don't know, what is that, 500 years to try to close that gap? So anything that seems radical to me and transparent and fairness, which are the values that seem to be driving this company, I'm all for.
So can I just take a slightly different perspective on it? You know, it's a tech company, and it's a small tech company. And being a tech company, you've got a lot of people who are likely very aligned. And I'm not saying it couldn't work, because I think actually it could work. But what can happen is, as companies start to grow and they have scale, would it work the same way? Or would you lose some of that pay equality going through the process? And here's just another angle for it. What happens if you have a key employee in the tech sector? They're a hot commodity. They get a job offer for a lot more money, and you're not having a meeting for, let's say, 2 months down the road, and you lose a critical member of your team based on compensation. And particularly in the tech arena, based on the research I've done, by 2025, there will be 250,000 vacant tech positions. And what that means is the war for talent is very real. And so I understand what is also very real is pay inequality. I've been talking about it for years. But I think you have to look at the scale, you look at the organization, you look at the sector, and you still continue to brainstorm and be innovative.
I mean, can we talk about inequities for a second, a deeper dive? Because I feel like this article made my brain go to an expose that the Toronto started this weekend that didn't get the anger and reaction on Twitter that it should have. Basically, this article exposed that the top CEOs, the wealthiest CEOs across this country, that they on average make more than 200 times this average Canadian's income. In other words, the average CEO makes in 4 days what the average Canadian worker makes in 1 year. This is outstanding. And a lot of these CEOs were the same ones who were saying, oh, it's a pandemic, you know, we'll take a pay cut. This is actually like a complete fallacy, because their salary on paper may have taken a bit of a hit, but most of their salary comes from their bonuses and their, you know, kickbacks and whatever else you have. So, I mean, to me, if we're going to have a conversation about employees judging other employees, you first need to look at the top and how that inequity structure is taking place. Maybe the employees need to weigh in on how much money they think their CEOs should be making. Anyway, I'll leave that there. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, and maybe because Patty is here and this is her world, isn't there an argument to be made, Patty, though, that when you speak about talent, like in the example that you just gave, that also does extend to the leader, that just because a CEO makes X amount of money and maybe makes so much more than other employees, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if that is a very strong leader and has earned that paycheck?
Well, there's no question about it that CEOs right across the country in large corporations make a lot of money. And Cynthia is absolutely right. Bonuses, stock options, but that's often based on performance, and they need to deliver. And they can typically be leading organizations of a small village, large village, 25,000, 30,000 employees. And so when you look at comparable data, not just in Canada, but around the globe, Canada, the US, other countries, they're pretty much in line. And this is a report that is done every single year. People look at it, they get frustrated by it. But I think it's more along the line of individuals, women climbing the corporate ladder. We're seeing education sources growing, entrepreneurship is growing, but we still haven't made that parity yet. But strides, they're starting to happen. The conversations are happening.
Well, I think that's what's
that this
critical
article
is the
pointed out.
conversations. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this article did point out that a lot of these CEOs actually aren't leading their companies into success. Some of them were failing businesses that had lost money, and yet the CEOs still made a lot of money. I just want to go to Samantha on Facebook, who said, I'd rather have my boss determine my salary with their experience, even if we disagree on some items. My salary isn't a popularity contest. It's my performance, and that would turn into a huge competition among colleagues. Yeah, I mean, do you worry that, like, if this case was to become norm, would it become this kind of cliquey high school dynamics where the popular kids get to, all the benefits, and the kids who are like sort of more awkward, the grunge kids in the corner?
No, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, like, if we imagine that would be, especially that one person on your team who, like, everybody doesn't like, and then that person is submitting themselves for a raise. That said, I think I have to disagree with with that viewer whose note you just read. Samantha, was it, Cynthia?
Yep.
Because I understand, like, of course, you are thinking that it would result in a huge competition among your colleagues in terms of jealousy. Like, what? How much are you making? Wow, I want that from you. But the thing is that even if your colleagues found out how much you were making, they wouldn't be taking it from you. They'd be asking your boss for the same. It's not your money your colleagues are coming after. It's going to the top and saying, give me the same. And that is why we've been conned by bosses into thinking that if we talk about money, we will get competition and resentment from our colleagues. It's not true. What we'll do is we'll ask the boss for more money, and the boss wants to save money. The boss doesn't want to give you any more money. That's why the divide and conquer thing has always worked, but we have to push back against it now. Sharing salary information to help with your negotiation. I'm not saying it has to be a panel like this radical company in Argentina, but talking to your colleagues and asking what their best practices are and the ballpark of what they're making is only going to help you in your negotiations with your boss. So that is what I would leave there.